Hey, everyone, and welcome to the Mark Prater podcast, where our aim is to connect our global family of Sovereign Grace churches with our executive director. Mark, we have a global friend
We do.
with us on the podcast today, our friend, Pastor Ed O'Mara. Welcome to the podcast, Ed.
Thank you. Thank you both for having me here. It's a privilege to be here.
It's a privilege to have you on. It's a real treat. For anybody checking out the podcast who doesn't know Ed, Ed has been a pastor in Sovereign Grace for many years. And just a few years ago, he and his family moved to Torino, Italy. And a year and a half ago, officially planted Sovereign Grace Church of Torino, which is an exciting development, especially in a country that desperately needs the gospel. Now, I called it Sovereign Grace Church of Torino because I am an American who has no idea how to actually pronounce the name of your church. So let's get into our conversation. Ed, tell us about your family, about your wife and your kids, how long you've been married, and the actual pronunciation of the church that you planted.
All right, I'll do my best with the pronunciation, and my good friend Rocco Dalia can tell me if I did it well or not when he listens to this. But it is Chiesa Grazia Sovrana di Torino.
Mm.
So there you go.
Ed said that
So
before we started recording. I said, I'm not even going to try.
Right, right.
I would just embarrass myself.
yeah,
So
if
thanks,
you
Ed.
just do this a lot, then you're probably with your hands. Then you probably got it
Yeah.
halfway there.
So tell us about your family.
Yeah. So I'm married to Robin. We've been married for a little over 27 years now. We actually met
Hmm.
over
Wow.
30 years ago now,
Wow.
which helps me remember that I am getting old, if
Yes,
I'm
you
not
are.
already there. So we met in university. Actually, the first night I was there, she had been there a week earlier to play for the soccer team for our university. So we met there, and we were together throughout our university years. Got married right after university, and then about 9 years later, we had our first child, Tegan. She's 18 now,
Mm.
and
Wow.
then Leodin. She goes by Leah here in Italy. She's 16, and then our son is Killian. He's 12.
Nice.
You know,
That's great. That's great. Good. Some good Irish names there.
yeah, yeah. It's very easy for Italians to pronounce.
Yeah, I
And with the
bet.
flag behind you, the connection with your wife and soccer, all of it's coming together.
Oh yeah, it's just it's I use
Yeah.
anything I can to keep fooling her into thinking that like she should just stay close to my side. But by the grace of God, she has done so.
Yeah. And that
Wonderful.
flag, by the way, for our listeners, if you don't recognize it, is the Tottenham Hotspur club flag. And one of the things that Ed and I go back and forth on is the Tottenham club because we're both fans. So
Right.
just a shout out to Tottenham since you
I
have
have
it.
no idea
Since
what you guys are talking about.
yeah, right. I know you don't.
It's the Lord's
Ed, you
chosen team. Yep.
yeah, it is. It is. And there's some other Sovereign Grace pastors who are Tottenham
I've
fans. They'll
heard.
be they'll be cheering this podcast episode on. So, Ed, you've been a pastor in two Sovereign Grace churches here in the States, Grace Community Church in Souderton, Pennsylvania, and Cross Point Church in Arnold, Maryland,
That's right.
which is you've got a number of years of pastoral experience behind you before you went to Italy. So tell us about how your desire to plant in Italy first surfaced and how your move to Italy came about.
Yeah, well, it's sort of a long story. I'll try to be brief. Those of you who know me know that that's not always easy, but
Hmm.
I would say I've had a long sense of connection to Europe, European things, European life, culture. And before I was a pastor, when I was working as an electrical engineer, my wife Robin and I had an opportunity, and we were very close to accepting jobs and moving to London. But it was around that same time that the Lord kind of stirred up a call towards ministry. But the thought of Europe always kind of remained on our hearts, knowing at least to some degree that there was a need for church members at least that could be there and be helping the work of the ministry go forward. So that was kind of in our mind and our hearts. And we thought, okay, well maybe we'll go to Europe. And when the Lord stirred up the thought of pastoral ministry, we kind of put that to the side. and went to Pastors College, came back and served at the church that sent us to Pastors College, which was Grace Community Church in Souderton, where Jeremy Bell is leading, and we loved it there. We loved being part of the church family there. We were there for a number of years before, both as members and then serving as part of the pastoral team. And then the Lord moved us to Arnold, which is near Annapolis, Maryland, to lead a church that was seeking adoption there. And yeah, we were just so grateful to be there as well, feeling like it was really home. And when we relocated to Maryland in 2013, I thought this is where we're going to be for life. This is home. We were very happy with that prospect. We loved the church. We loved what the Lord was doing, and the work that He was doing within the life of the church. We felt just a lot of joy and connection with the broader community, had opportunities for outreach and evangelism. So we couldn't really have imagined a better scenario for serving the Lord and for serving His church. So fast forward again about 3 more years from there to 2016. Robin's parents gave us a gift to celebrate our 40th birthdays, and Robin found some amazing deal to go to Italy. So we spent about 10 days just exploring. It was really just a vacation time. And at the end of the trip, the day before we were set to fly out, we were in Milan, and it was a Sunday morning. And we had been going sort of nonstop at that point. And I said to Robin, hey, I think I want to try to get over and see the Last Supper painting. And there was like 1 or 2 potential spots, and they fill up very quickly, and I didn't have a reservation. So she wasn't very interested in doing that. She was like, you know what? I think we've been going so much that I'd like to just stick back and rest here this morning before we fly out tomorrow. So, like I said, it was a Sunday morning, and I'd been in Europe a number of times on Sunday mornings, and in all of my opportunities or all the times I'd been there, I'd seen people on public transit, perhaps taking a Bible with them, or people walking on the streets, and you could tell that there were people on the way to church. But what stuck out to me on that particular morning as I kind of made my way across the city from our hotel to where the Last Supper is I didn't see anybody. There was nobody out on the streets that looked like they were on their way to church. So I never did get access to see the Last Supper painting. Still to this day, I haven't seen it. But that stuck out to me. So a few weeks later, after we got back from Italy, I was starting at Southern. I was starting a class that I had already signed up for, called Intercultural Church Planting. And the sort of capstone assignment of the class was to design a plan or a church planting network in a foreign country. So that required some researching the current state of affairs, building relationships to a certain degree with people that are there to kind of understand what was going on, how you can pray for them, and then just kind of present that as your sort of final project. So I asked the professor if it would be all right if I did Italy. I was like, I know a lot of people are doing like Malaysia, places in Africa, places that are in other parts of the world. Would Italy be okay? He's like, absolutely. I've actually never had anybody do something in Southern Europe. I'd love to see what you come up with and understand more about what the state of the gospel is and gospel-centered churches are in Europe, particularly in Southern Europe. So started reaching out, doing research, and the Lord used that to help me build some relationships and to get some more information and understand the situation there. And I actually learned it was worse than I thought. Like statistically, less than 1% of Italians are regenerated.
Wow.
So Italy is actually ranked by the Joshua Project as an unreached country, which I came to learn during that research. So believe it or not, with the Vatican, right there centered in the center of Italy, people calling it a Christian country, it is not. It could be nothing further from the truth. So in the midst of all that, one particular relationship that I continued to develop, I began to discuss their local church with our elder team, because they were a small church plant in Italy, and we were a small church in Maryland. And I said to our elders, "What do you think about if we did some like short-term missions to just try and help them out, reach out with the gospel. It might be helpful for our church after having gone through the season that we went through to just kind of get our eyes out on not just doing evangelism here in our own city, but across the globe. So they
Mm.
liked the idea. We put a team together from a couple different Sovereign Grace churches actually, and we did that short-term mission trip for a couple of years, and it was through that the Lord continued to press more so on my heart at the time the thought of maybe one day doing missions in Italy, and it was kind of that reawakening of some of the European connection at the time. So um, in 2019, so 3 years after that, well, it was 2 years after the first trip, three years after the trip that just Robin and I did for vacation. The Lord was starting to speak more pronouncedly and more clearly, to the
Mm.
point where in the span of a week on two different Sundays, he spoke to Robin very clearly and spoke to me very clearly independently. And
Mm.
we basically said, this isn't a discussion just between us anymore. We need to bring this to the elders and get their help with it, get their input,
Wow.
and just say, hey, listen, if you guys say no, we stay. We love it here. We're not looking to go anywhere. We're under the authority of the eldership team here. We're part of this team. We love this church. We don't want to do anything that hurts this church. But they listened and they heard and they agreed to go away and pray and came back. And to a person, and this was so humbling. They said, "We don't like this because we don't want you to leave," which is
Sure.
nice to hear.
Yeah.
You don't want people like, "Yeah, this is a great idea.
Yeah,
Get out there,"
right.
because they don't want you there. But what's even more humbling is they said, we don't think you're just meant to go. We think we're meant to send you. And this is to be a
Mm.
church plant from Cross Point Church in Arnold. Now, keep in view, this church had gone through the ringer before I came there. There was just a lot of difficulty. Mark, you'd be familiar with it. And the Lord just was restoring and bringing health to the church through the elder team that was there before I got there, and he
Mm.
continued that when we were able to be there and be serving. And here they are now. They're saying, yeah, let's sow out. So that was
Yeah.
very encouraging, and that's really where uh, things kind of um, things kind of crystallized for us. And then COVID hit and slowed everything down.
Right.
But the Lord was actually at work even during COVID.
Mm.
That's when I met Rocco Dalia. And we had the ability to have longer Zoom calls, and just to get to know him and get to understand what he was thinking about church planting. He was in the UK at the time doing seminary, and the Lord was bringing him back to he's Italian, so bringing him back to Italy to plant a church, and he wanted to do it with a family of churches, and felt like Sovereign Grace was the place where he wanted to be.
Mm.
So I was excited because I from the beginning felt like the Lord was positioning me to go and maybe be more on the pioneering side, but really to work with somebody that I could invest in and position that person to be the long-term lead pastor,
Yeah.
so that the church is authentically Italian and is being
Mm.
built into a network of other Italian churches, a Sovereign Grace network, Sovereign Grace churches in Italy, so to say, which is what we're doing, and I'm extremely grateful. I couldn't be doing a tenth of what
Mm.
I am doing if it weren't for Rocco. So we decided to send Rocco to the Pastors College. He went to the Pastors College for a year, between UK and coming back to Italy. And that's the year that we moved to Italy, and we're working on language training and just getting our feet under us. We were in Sicily, with the church. It's now a candidate church in Sovereign Grace that's led by Giuseppe Fortuna,
Yeah.
um, in Catania. And in the midst of all that, the Lord led Scott Crook
Hmm.
from Minnesota, from Chaska, Minnesota, to take my role in Arnold, and he is just doing an outstanding job there. I was
Mm.
there right after the conference, and he is just doing such an outstanding. It brings such delight to my heart to see how
Mm.
healthy the church is and how he's leading, and he's just. I think probably the best pastoral move I ever did at Crosspoint Church was leaving
Mm.
so that Scott could lead. He's the real deal, and I'm very very encouraged by what God's doing there. So okay, so
Mm.
that wasn't as brief as I hoped, or maybe promised, but that's the answer.
It's a great answer.
Great. Yeah. Well, we're so grateful for your faith to do an extraordinary thing, to relocate to Italy. And clearly, coming through all of this is your heart of compassion for a country that desperately needs Jesus. And I love how your story really illustrates the way that God's kind providence works so often. You're just taking steps of faith, and there's more light and clarity as you seek to be faithful for what God puts in front of you. Next thing you
True.
know, you're in Italy, planning a church. But before you went to Italy, you did serve in rural Pennsylvania and in the hinterlands of Maryland, uh,
Yeah.
and so that's a very different world, of course, the east coast of the states from Italy, I would suspect. And yet, God uses all of these things together to prepare a man like you for this kind of work. So, how did your experience in pastoral ministry in the States prepare you for this church plant?
Mm. Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, again, much can be said here. And first, I would have to say nothing can really truly prepare you,
Mm,
or totally prepare you, I guess is maybe a better way to say it, for church planting or for moving to a new culture.
sure.
You're going to be brought low. You're going to be brought to to see your weakness. It's going to be revealed, particularly when you're going into a new culture. Um, and you have to go through it to be prepared for it in one sense.
Mm,
But I do think that there are some really key elements that must be in place. And I think the Lord did a few things in me beyond just having an interest or a burden. I think there are a lot of people that have an interest or a burden, but there's a difference between just having an interest or a burden and actually being prepared. And I would say
right.
that for pastoral ministry, in its most proper sense, it owes its allegiance to a gospel culture and not to a
Mm,
national culture, right?
Mm,
mm,
So
mm.
we don't
Well
we
said.
don't we don't contextualize for the sake of, well, we need to make the gospel fit here. No, the gospel fits wherever we're called to go.
yes.
So being prepared and theologically trained at the PC in particular, and then putting that into practice in the life of a local church, for me it was Souderton and Arnold. And it was, I mean, that's what pastoral ministry is. It doesn't look a lot different.
Mm,
It wasn't a different task than what Rocco and I are doing here in Torino,
mm,
that I was doing in those two locations. Now, of course, there are cultural considerations to consider within
mhm,
life here in Italy. But the Word of God and the Gospel of Jesus, they transcend. It subsumes and it transcends and it supersedes all of these other considerations. And the Word of God and the Gospel are timeless, transcendent truths that we
yes.
must not seek to alter or adjust or accommodate the culture in any way. So
Amen.
there are a lot of things I think that we can grow in as a family of churches. But one thing that I think we have that is a key and correct foundation stone is that everything must be tested by and built on the gospel.
Amen.
I just never want to lose that. I know that sounds so foundational, and people out there that are Sovereign Grace pastors are saying, "Duh, that's who we are." And
Mm,
I thank God that that's the response, right? That our pastoral experience, our pastoral call and work is built on the gospel. Um, so I think that those experiences in Souderton and Arnold, and just watching people patiently bear with me as I was making pastoral mistakes, it's all of that's relevant to the planting of a
mm,
church in no matter what culture you're in, what country you're in, but it is the gospel. I think the other thing that came to mind as I was speaking there is the importance of ecclesiology. It's a key
mhm,
factor, which is obviously not just a stack of pages in something called the BCO, right? Our ecclesiology
right.
functions, it works. And being a pastor means we function within our ecclesiology.
Mhm,
So what we're doing in Italy is not building the plane in the air. We're building on what we've been given, and we're seeking to do it in a way that integrates the church God's called us to plant and integrate the people that we're shepherding and caring for into our family of churches really right from the get-go. And I
mm,
think that's huge. I think that's a very important thing. I have friends who are planting churches and doing pastoral ministry in various parts of the world, and I Some of these guys don't have ecclesiologically defined or bounded families of churches that they belong to. And I
Mm,
can see them being, even sometimes when guys do have that, but I particularly see it with guys that are sort of untethered. This sense of intense pragmatism is what's
mm,
driving
Mm.
them,
mm,
particularly in
mm,
church planting. And I see
mhm,
these godly, gifted guys. I mean, good guys, way better than me by 10,000 miles. But in fact, I can see that there's a weakness that's getting repeated over and over again. And it's this tendency to try and innovate and make the church project, the
Mm.
project of the church run efficiently, be
mm.
impressive to those that are around them. And that temptation exists here in Italy as well as it does in the States. Now, of course, we consider those things, but our ecclesiology is a gift
Yes.
to us. And it's also a guide to us that keeps us confessionally bound, keeps
Yeah.
us building on the values that are our shared values, and it must not be compromised in the name of pragmatism. And I
Hmm.
learned that in the
Right.
States. I learned that on the ground. I learned it in the pastor's college, but I saw it fleshed out on the ground in Souderton and in Arnold. And it applies everywhere we build churches because it gives us the grid that can't be compromised. It also helps us to not be super rigid so that we prioritize the local church and the local context in a way that both honors our confession with an appropriate amount. It helps us to learn how to be flexible and how to appropriately contextualize. Without that grid, you contextualize based on a set of rules that you just make up for yourself.
Hmm.
So again, I'd have to say that I think Rocco being alongside me, which is of course part of our ecclesiological value to have elder plurality and
Right.
to do team ministry, having him alongside of me after having had a year at the pastor's college in which he absorbed the same values and the convictions and the DNA of sovereign grace,
Hmm.
and then being an Italian man, it just makes this church plant work a joy. I mean, it can be slow at times, but it's slow and it's steady and it's solid right from the start because we're doing it
Mm.
on those ecclesiological values that we've been given here in Sovereign Grace.
Mm.
Excellent.
So well said, Ed. That's a great answer, and I really appreciate you pointing out the importance of gospel centrality, which is not just a sovereign grace thing, as you know, um, but man, it's something we never want to lose,
Yeah.
and always want to keep at the center of what we do in terms of how we plant and build churches. Speaking of planting, tell us about your just hope and vision for planting your church in Torino.
Yeah. Well, first, and I guess primarily, we are happily under the mandate to establish a strong gospel-centered local church in Torino. So I
Hmm.
can't not say that after everything I just said, right? I
Right,
think
Right.
we're
right.
sort of mandated to make that response too. But I'd say that we're seeking to do that in a way that's visible and accessible to those that the Lord is calling us to reach here in our city. And yeah, that's could be quite general, I guess, in one way. But I think maybe secondly, to refine a little bit, we're committed to reaching out to our community with the gospel and being an evangelistic church who is
Mm.
meaningfully connected to our community around us.
Amen.
Which means that we're pursuing youth and families and university students and working professionals relationally.
Mm.
In Europe, the programmatic approach is it's very quickly looked at with suspicion. So you have to build a relationship before
Mm,
you can even start inviting and getting people into a context where you can share the gospel maybe in a more systematized way
Mm.
or in a group setting or for them to come to church. You have to have a relationship. There has to be a sense of connection with the people. And I think the other thing that I would say vision wise for our church is we specifically want to pursue and train future leaders
Mm.
such that Torino, along with the church in Catania, as well as other churches that are yet to be planted here in Italy, will function within a broader interdependent European network, a sovereign grace Italian network, but also our broader European
Nice.
family of churches here. And I think those are things that if you don't, I would say it this way, if you don't in Italy pursue future leaders,
mm,
you've got one generation and you're
yeah.
Mm.
done. That's true everywhere, but it's more true here in Italy because there's not a future generation
Mm,
yet. It needs to be pursued.
mm,
So from the get-go, that's what we felt like the Lord was calling us to do. Pursue young men that can be pastors, pursue young people that will build the church, be pillars in the church. And even those that are
Mm.
university students that may leave here after a few years and go elsewhere, pursue them and invest in them. And there may never be a Sovereign Grace Church in their city, but what you sowed into them will bear lasting fruit.
Excellent. Uh, you know, uh, people think about Italy. And some of us have seen the pictures here and there come back from you living there, and it's beautiful. And
Yeah.
people think about food and the beauty of Italy and so forth, the vacation destination. But in reality, you are working hard in Torino. Perhaps there are certainly blessings there in Italy in your
Yeah.
new home, but many challenges. So share with us what is most challenging when it comes to planning a church in Italy?
Yeah. Yeah, I think Ben, you hit it on the head. Rocco and I laugh about this all the time about how Italy is probably the best place in the world to visit, but
Mm,
it's not the worst place in the world to live at all. I don't mean it that way, but it is definitely harder. It's
mm,
harder to live than many other places throughout Europe or in the States. And I think one of the challenges for me, well, you could even just hear it in the pace with which I speak. I'm not a patient person. The Lord has been
mm,
at work in my heart for coming up on
mm.
50 years now, and I've got a long way to go in
Same.
that. And the pace is really difficult in Italy at times. It
Mm,
is it is slow. There can be expectations that you move fast when somebody wants something from you,
mm,
but the pace of getting things done can be very, very slow at times. At times, it feels like you take two steps forward and then sometimes one, two, maybe even three steps back. Bureaucracy, for instance, the bureaucratic environment is it's challenging to navigate.
mm,
That's been both personal and church-wide in its impact. So getting our church registered as a legal entity in the States, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, you still have to write bylaws and submit those sorts of things, and it may take you a month or two, maybe a little longer than that to get that done. But here it was the better part of a year, maybe even a little longer than that, and maybe it was actually closer to a year and a half. And, it meant going through all of our internal documentation and registering all of that, waiting on approval. So that's just a small example. The
mhm,
bureaucracy can be challenging at times. I think one of the other challenges that a lot of pastors face, particularly if they don't read English, is that there are a lack of resources and a lack of church
mm,
culture as well. So
mm,
it's not just written resources or audio resources. You there can be a sense in which you feel like you're constantly clearing the ground and pulling up rocks because even the people around you don't really have a biblical vocabulary.
wow.
mm, mm,
So you almost feel like you're constantly passing over the same ground,
Mm,
not building,
mm,
and that can be challenging at times. I think economically, it's very challenging for people who live in Italy. Taxes are very, very high.
mm,
Salaries are low, and the tendency to not buy into giving to a church. People haven't been taught about
mm,
tithing and giving, and even if people are seeking to be generous and give, there's just not as much to go around as you would
mm.
have in a more wealthy culture. So that has an effect. I think that you can
sure.
you can feel that at times. For me personally, challenge probably the biggest challenge is the language. I make so many
Mm,
mistakes. I say
mm,
things I wouldn't repeat it on a podcast, but I said something in my preaching this last Sunday. It wasn't vulgar necessarily, but it was embarrassing that I said it, and it was humiliating. It was
mm.
just a mispronunciation of two words that are similar, and I meant to say one word and I said the other word, and people were snickering,
Oh
and I
boy.
found out later why. So that's humbling,
Mm,
humiliating and humbling both. But one really wonderful thing about Italians is they are incredibly forgiving and patient with
mm.
language learning. If I mean, you just come over and on vacation, you're like pizza, pasta, and people are like, "Oh, you speak Italian?" I was like, "Okay." So Italians are wonderful in that
Mm,
regard. But in reality, I think if anyone, if any, that would probably be the biggest counsel I would give to somebody that was thinking of doing any foreign missions in a place where they have to use a language that's not their mother tongue, and they have to acquire the language, particularly if you're older, like I was when we moved, is focus on the language, work hard, and don't quit
Mm,
focusing on the language.
Mm.
You know, our call as pastors is word based.
Yeah.
So you
mhm.
can't minimize the importance of communicating clearly as a pastor.
Yeah.
And I think my foibles and my weaknesses in the language do create difficulty and challenge for me, even though people are very gracious. That would be, those are just some of the challenges I would
Mm.
highlight.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yes, it's good to hear those. Just because we're what I think wherever you live, whether it's the states or people listening from outside the states, it's one thing to plant a church in a culture that you know and the language you know. It's a different thing to do it
Yeah.
in a different culture and different language. So we really, as Ben said earlier, appreciate your faith
Yeah.
to go, and also that of Robin's and your children.
Mm.
Um, and also just just listening to you. Italy, as other parts of Europe, are just spiritually dark places,
Mm.
and you're a light in the darkness, and
Mm.
so grateful for what you're doing. So, in light
Amen.
of that, tell us how long the church has been gathering on a Sunday, and how those services gone.
Yeah. So we've been, technically we've been a church plant for about a year and a half now. I guess it's coming up on a year and a half. We've been meeting in our house, and when we started, for probably the first 4 months, it was just about seven of us, my family and Rocco and Mari. And by
Mm.
the grace of God, we just started to grow. Lord
Mm,
just started adding people through various outreaches and connections and
Wonderful.
ways that we're meeting with people. So we meet in our living room, and we're at about 20 people now,
Oh,
oh wow,
praise God.
which
nice.
is it's still small, yeah, but in reality, we're almost to the size of an average gospel preaching church in Italy, if you
Mm.
believe it.
Let's
There are
go.
Yeah,
the
come
yeah,
on.
like this is anecdotal. I don't know if this is 100% accurate, but I was talking to a friend who's also a Reformed pastor. He's a part of another group of churches, and we were kind of thinking that somewhere in the 40 to 60 range would be on the large to maybe even the largest of the Reformed
Mm.
churches in all of Italy. So that just kind of puts it in perspective.
You're
So we're
halfway
It
thankful
there.
does.
for, yeah, exactly. The Lord, and we're still meeting in our house. We can't even advertise that we're here.
Mm.
So the services have been great. We gather, we worship, we celebrate the sacraments together, we share
Mm.
fellowship. I think it's outstanding. It's small, but it's special.
Mm.
And we just completed our first members course, and we're in
Mm,
the process of formalizing the
Very
first,
cool.
kind of recognizing the first members of the church.
wow.
And we'll be doing that in the next few weeks here. And I would also have to say one of the other things that's been well, maybe two other things, they're connected, that would be have been a highlight for me is just seeing Rocco leading and taking more of the pastoral place within
Mm.
the life
Mm,
of the church. And the Lord has also given us two other young men that
mm,
we are investing in. So I mentioned the
Praise
importance of
God.
that earlier. The Lord's answered that prayer very early on in the life of our church, and these men they're reading, they're studying, and they're evaluating what pastoral ministry would look like in the future. And I actually
mm,
had a Sunday. It was probably about 5 or 6 weeks ago. I came back from visiting some sister Sovereign Grace churches in the UK. I got back on a Saturday, and I think Rocco was preaching that Sunday, and then the other two guys were doing different things and leading. And I just sat there and I watched these three Italian men leading our church, and I was
oh,
just like,
Wow.
Lord, you are doing
It's
this.
beautiful.
And it was
that's
so
great.
encouraging, very incredible to see, but also very encouraging to my heart.
Mm,
So yeah, that's how things have been going, and I'm constantly looking to get out of the way because those guys they're just growing and they're just doing such a
Mm.
great job. So
mm,
Great to hear.
wonderful.
yeah,
Well, if someone lives in or near Torino, or maybe anyone checking out the podcast who has friends or family that might be interested in visiting the church and checking things out, how does one find out where you meet?
yeah. Well, because right now we're still meeting in our home, probably the easiest thing to do would just be to go to our church website. So that's
Good.
www.cgstorino.it for Italy.
Mm.
And there's both an English and an Italian platform there. It's a very simple website, but there's contact information right on there, and you can see how to get in contact with us, and we could connect you with where we're going to be, make sure people, if they were in the area, make sure they knew how to get to where we are with public transit or if they're driving or whatever it would be. So yeah, I think that's if somebody were visiting or in the area and maybe planning a trip into the area, that's what I would say. Check those means out, get in contact with us. If somebody were thinking of, I'm not 100% sure you asked this question, but I'm going to say it anyway and be a little bit of a
Do it.
salesman here. If someone would want to consider relocating to be part of the church
Yeah.
plant, we would
Amen.
welcome that discussion, and we would love to see that happen. Again, there would
Mhm.
be language learning and all of that if they were
Hmm.
coming from outside of Italy or didn't have the language. And they can use the same platform, our website, to get in touch with us through email or WhatsApp or whatever it might be. But we would really want to help them with we would want to interact with them and help them to think through and to guide them in the evaluation process, so that they don't think of it as coming for pizza and beautiful scenery, but they understand the realities of what it would look like and would be well
Sure.
positioned to serve for a long time.
Mm, that's wonderful. And we may have folks listening to this podcast that hear that and are stirred in some way. The
Yeah,
Yeah.
Spirit may work in unexpected ways. So may that happen.
yeah.
And as you know, you've been a part of Sovereign Grace for a long time. We're a family of churches, a denomination, but a family of churches. And
Mm.
a couple of things I want to say related to that. You're the only Sovereign Grace church in Italy at this point.
Mm.
And I'm sure there's moments when you feel a bit isolated or alone. And just know we are a family of churches carrying you and Rocco, your families, and your church on our heart. And we would be remiss if we didn't ask you in this podcast how we can pray for you, because there are
Yeah.
members and pastors of our churches who will do just that. So,
Yeah.
how can we pray for you and your church plant in Torino?
Oh, well, thank you, Mark. And I do have to say, by the grace of God, we have not felt alone at all.
Mm,
Mm.
And I would say that I think it's fair to say, Rocco would say the same thing. We feel very well cared for and very well supported and connected.
mm,
Rocco doesn't have the same amount of time and history in Sovereign Grace, and I think he would say that. And that's a testimony to the people that are not
mm,
just the pastors, but the people that are in Sovereign Grace
Mm.
that are praying people, that are caring people, that are committed people. And we're so thankful for that. So the starting point would be Thanksgiving. I think going along with that, one of the things, if
Mm.
people are going to pray for us, start with Thanksgiving, because God has
Mm.
been doing some just
That's
wonderful
good.
things. He's been providing for us. We've been growing, as I mentioned. We have future Italian leaders that we're
mm,
investing in.
mm,
We've seen at least one conversion. There may be another one
Mm.
that the Lord has been on the work in another individual's heart. And God has protected and provided for everything that we've needed.
Mm.
He's protected and provided for Rocco and Madi with the gift of their little daughter, Claretta, that was born and wasn't breathing for 4 minutes. And the
Mm.
Lord spared her life. It's not even that she has no lasting impact. She is one of the most joyful little girls I've ever seen in my life. She
Praise
just
God.
lights up when she sees people. She's such a gift to the church. So our family is thriving here. Our kids have
Mm.
done wonderful in the Italian school systems, and that was probably the biggest request that we had, is that they would adjust well. So
mm,
all of this is to the praise of the glory of God, and I would want to just start there with
mm,
Thanksgiving first. But
mm,
I am also thankful that people do want to pray for things that are still before us in ways that we need to continue to grow. Pray that the Lord would continue to grow us both spiritually and relationally,
mhm,
and numerically, and that our,
mhm,
our
Mm-hmm.
outreach efforts would be effective. We,
mm.
we came here to see the dark be pushed out and the light shining brightly.
Amen.
So we want to see people saved. Pray for that.
Yeah.
We want to be effective in His hands in our outreach. I think another thing to pray for is pray for Rocco and Mari. I don't think he would mind me saying this, but he wouldn't say it himself. They need to find a house that's big enough for their family.
Mm,
They
Mm.
they both work from home. from their home. We don't have an office space yet. So they both work from home. They have a 4-month-old daughter who is right there with them in a small 1-bedroom flat.
Mm,
And getting the provision that they would need to get into a house is a real need. So we're praying that the Lord would meet that need, in either
mm,
financially or lead them to a place that would be financially low enough that they could afford to be in it, and it fits their family, and they'd be very content in a spot like that.
mm,
Similarly, I think pray for our church to find a meeting place outside of our home.
Yeah.
We
mm,
actually have kind of a two-pronged approach that we're looking at right now. We have a building that is potentially affordable for a purchase. We would still need to collect some funding for that to
mm,
happen, like a significant amount of funding actually. But it would be ideal, and it would really set the church up for the long term, where there wouldn't
mm,
need to be bills for mortgage or things like that. You would be in a,
mm,
a place that you could grow and have connection to the community. It's in an ideal location. Um, but until we have those funds, we're looking at a community center, which is in the area that we would just rent space, once a week or maybe twice a week if we had some outreaches or ways that we were seeking to do ministry in the midweek.
mm,
So that's nearby the potential rental or the potential purchase property. So we'd really like to be into something by springtime. It'd be,
mm,
be wonderful to have some clarity, some open doors and direction on that.
mm.
As I said, things move slowly in Italy, so we've been trying to keep the gas down, but also recognizing that the Lord has to open the doors.
Yeah.
I'm preaching in Mark this Sunday, the passage where it's right at the end of the book of Mark when the three women come to the grave and the stone is rolled away, and
Mm,
and in one of my readings the commentator just made the point that the stone was rolled away because God rolled it away. He's the only one that has the power to do these things. It just gave me encouragement in my heart, like whatever we need to be done here.
Mm, mhm.
We may have a whole punch list of things that we want, but the things that we need to have done, God will do, and He'll
Amen.
do it.
yeah.
So we could have faith for it, and we are so thankful for the prayers of the people of Sovereign Grace Churches and whoever else might be listening.
Mm, great. Well, thank you for spending this time with us and giving us an update about how things are going there. It's so encouraging. Your example of faith, your willingness to sacrifice for the sake of the gospel, is compelling. And we thank God for you and Rocco and your families. And we'll be praying for you and looking forward to hearing more stories of God at work in Torino as you seek to be faithful there. So thank you, Ed. Thank you, everyone, for checking out the podcast. And we'll see you here next week, Lord willing. Bye for now.
Thank you for watching. If you have questions or comments, Mark would love to hear from you. For more videos like this, hit subscribe on YouTube or by email at markkprater.com.